Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Minus, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. And welcome back to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. And I'm still your host, Brad Minus. And today I am so lucky and honored to have Renee Jones with me. She's an author, she's a coach, she's a speaker, and she has really dug deep into yo-yo dieting and how to keep you from going through those challenges. Renee, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you, Brad. How are you?
I am excellent, and I'm very excited to have you on. So this conversation is going to be wonderful. But first, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, maybe the complement of your family, where you grew up, brothers and sisters, and what was it like to be Renee as a kid?
Oh, dear. So I have one brother. We are a year and 13 days apart. My parents planned me, but I was about 2 years early. And I have been rather on time or early ever since. My parents were teachers. My father was, when I was born, he was the football coach, janitor, math teacher, bus driver, and I think he was also the assistant principal. It was a very small school.
Obviously.
But as he was working his way up, then we moved to different towns along the way. So by the time I was 14, I had lived in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was my 7th house.
What?
Houses.
If he had all those jobs, obviously he wasn't military, so...
No, it was just moving up in the school systems. You had to move in order to get a better position.
All right.
So
was it in the same state?
Yeah. It was all in Texas.
Okay.
In and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, north, around more than in. When I was born in Grapevine, Texas, which was a very small town. The nearest birthing hospital was actually in Arlington, which was a good half hour away. Now I live in Arlington, and my father said, "You haven't gone very far in your life, girl." I said, "No, just around the world and back. Come on, Dad." He became a principal of a small school, and then he was working to be in a larger school. Finally, when they landed, he was the high school principal, and my mother was the English teacher. And it was a small school system. So my brother, my father, my mother, and I were all in the same building for 3 years, and he was our principal. So it was like, you can't go anywhere and misbehave.
And then, of course, the gossip from the students themselves would somehow make its way to mom and dad, right?
No, we had to behave ourselves.
Did you do any extracurriculars in high school?
I was 1 year in the drum corps because the school didn't have a band yet. I'm telling you, my graduating class was 56 students. The town was so small, it's only been in the last decade that they got a stoplight.
Okay. I didn't even know those towns. I mean, I know I've been through some small towns and stuff, but it's kind of like a small town, a suburb of a big town. But just that small town. Did you walk down the streets of your town and know everybody?
They knew me, whether or not I knew them. I knew a lot of people, and there were a lot of people that were in and out. I knew everyone on our street. Yeah.
I always wondered about that because, you see it in the movies and stuff where they're in this small town and everybody's got this little family-like atmosphere and they help each other and blah, blah, blah. And I always, I didn't know that can't exist. That's in the movies, But it sounds like, Arlington's a pretty big town.
Yes,
right?
It is. Yeah.
So how did you feel about growing up in this smaller town and then the bigger town? Which would you prefer to live in?
I like access to big town things. But even now, I told my husband when we got married and he moved we both moved to Arlington because we live in 2 different towns. But I said, I have to have a backyard. I need space. My grandparents had a ranch, I'm accustomed to space. So we have a big backyard, which helps me. But he was He moved when he went to college. He moved out of the house his family moved into when he was 3. So he's not one to move around a lot.
Right.
We've been in this house for 14 years, and I'm like, look, we got to move. I don't know if I can be in one place that long.
I hear you. I hear you. I spent as an adult, I started moving around pretty much because I was coming out of college. It was like moved across into Arizona from Chicago and then to the military. So then it was every 3 years. Yeah. And then when we finally settled in here, now I feel the same way. There was like ups and downs. I was like, sometimes it's like, I got to get out of here. But then I'm like, well, I've got roots. I've got connections. I'm like, I don't know if I want to build that again. Did you go to school together? Did you go to the same college, you and your husband?
No, we have a mixed marriage. He went to TCU and I went to Baylor.
Uh-oh. Aren't they? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what did you study?
Secondary education, and I taught English and journalism for 3 years.
Not surprising, Renee. Not
surprising. And Brad, the thing is, I still teach. I have the soul of a teacher. If I know how to do something and you're trying to figure it out, I am happy to figure it out with you. I love teaching various things. But I had a little detour after my first year of teaching, and I went to live in Wales for 2 years. Yes.
What? Why? Yeah. No, I'm going to have to do something about that. Why?
That's the normal response I get, Brad. I had an opportunity to coordinate activities at a community center. And I took it because it was such a fascinating option.
Just to spend some time in another country and get immersed in that.
Yeah. And that wasn't, I went back for one summer to work with a youth group and then went back again after I got my degree in counseling to open a counseling center for a church. So I spent like 4 years and a summer in the UK between 1986 and 1994.
When you say counseling, is there a specialty for counseling? How does that work?
Well, my degree is in marriage and family, but I didn't necessarily want to be a therapist. I wanted to work in churches, and I knew if you were on the staff of a church, you ended up doing a lot of counseling. I thought it was important to know what I was doing.
I get it. So did you grow up in the church?
Yeah. I was born in a nursery, I think. My mother's family, there were like 4 ministers. My grandmother had 9 brothers and sisters, and 7 of them, 4 of those either were ministers or married ministers. So it was kind of, in the veins, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I think organized religion's got its drawbacks, but it's a wonderful thing if it's done with as little politics as possible. That's my personal opinion. Yeah. I don't put my opinion on anybody else, but that's how I feel.
My father used to say, organized religion will make an atheist out of anybody.
Yeah.
But if it's done sincerely and non-judgmentally, it can be really good. It's a good lifestyle.
Yeah. I grew up in the Jewish religion. My father kind of grew up in a bunch of different religions because he basically would go with his friends, here and there. But his mom kept saying, my grandmother kept saying, no, we're Jewish. But all my aunts and uncles, all his brothers and sisters, they all married into a Christian religion, which is fine. So every time I went to a cousin's wedding, it was always in a church, in a Christian religion and the whole bit. I had girlfriends that I would attend church with, and then they would attend synagogue with me. That was always a good thing. I tended to date people that actually had a brain and were open-minded. So that was always good. But I will say that later on in life, I started getting involved with children's cancer. And I ended up going to quite a few funerals. And this is where I really felt something. Obviously in the Jewish religion, we have our ways. It's a very inward. It's a very Judaism is a very looking inward type of religion. Yes, there's a community. Yes, you go about the same things, but it seems like the Christian religions have something else. But here's where I felt like it was good. It was go to these funerals, and a lot of times you would go up to the receiving line and you give your condolences to the parents or the family. And then you just go sit. This was like the wake, it was more of a wake, not necessarily a funeral. And you just go sit. I'd peer out over this whole thing and I'd see all these people and they were sitting there, just sitting there. Nothing else was going on. No one's on phones. They were just sitting quietly. There was an energy in the church that remained so peaceful. It was like you would go and sit and you would give all of your energy to the family, your condolences, everything else, and you could feel it. And that's where I felt like, okay, you know what? I kind of was rebelling against organized religion at the time. And, because of a lot of things in the news and in politics and everything else. When I sat there and I actually was all these people selflessly sitting, giving their energy, and the energy swallowed the room up. And it was so peaceful that I'm like, okay, now I get it. Now I get it. This is the essence of religion right here. And that's where I got it. So you recently, you have been going into weight loss coaching and you've got a book out and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But where did you start noticing that things were kind of going off the wire as far as your health goes?
So my mother said that as a small child, I ate like a bird, a little bit all day long. And thank God for plastic wrap, right? You could put the plate back in there long before microwaves, but never mind. But when I got to school and I had to be more regimented, I guess something clicked for me because I gained weight. And my first diet, when I looked around and I saw all these skinny little blondes and brunettes and I was a chunky redhead, I thought, yeah, I got to do something about this. So I had my first diet at 10. And my mother said, you're a little bit young, bless her, but if you learn now how to regulate what you eat, then that will help you later on. Unfortunately, my family's not small in size generally. If they weren't in the church, they were farmers, ranchers, that sort of thing. So we had to eat to sustain us while we were out dealing with the cows and turkeys and all the rest of it. So she was not good at dieting. Blind leading the blind comes to mind. That just started my 40-year diet yo-yo. I would lose a little bit. I'd gain it back. I'd lose maybe 30 pounds. I'd gain it back. And I just did that for 40 stinking years.
Was there any of that where you had tried these mainstream diets?
Oh, yeah. I've tried them all. I think there are 2 I haven't done of all the ones that I've ever heard of. Well, now 3 if you count Ozempic. But yeah, I tried every one.
That doesn't count. That's drug-induced.
Yeah, I tried every diet going. And it would work while we did it. But when we got distracted or we were going to the ranch, which was always a food mania. My grandmother was a great cook and they liked to eat when they were together. Or, something would happen and we'd just go off or we'd get to a point where we thought, okay, this is good enough. And we would start the slow, steady rise again. I probably lost a ton, but I gained it all back incrementally.
And that's the trend right now.
Absolutely.
The last time I checked, 89% of Americans were
overweight.
Obese.
I was checking this the other day, and it's like 40% of Americans are obese.
Yeah.
30% are just overweight.
Yeah, so 70%. Okay, so a little off there, which is...
Who knows?
Right.
But the point is, I go into Costco yesterday, and I'm just thinking, look how many thin to obese people there are. And it took me a good 10 minutes to find someone who wasn't overweight. And I thought, I was in there for a while. I think I counted 100 significantly overweight. I'm not talking someone who's just carrying an extra 10, 15 pounds, right, but significantly overweight enough to notice. it was like, oh, we're killing ourselves. And we're killing our health system because so many of the issues come back to if they weren't overweight, it wouldn't be a problem.
I get that. I first started looking in a lot of airports when
Yes.
I was traveling for races. So I'm an endurance coach. I train people to do marathons and Ironmans and ultra marathons and obstacle course races and stuff. Anyway, I'm an athlete myself. I'd be traveling to different races, either to coach or to race myself. A lot of airports. So I was walking into Tampa, which is where I live, and unbelievable the amount of people that were overweight or obese, right? And just like crazy. Go into Chicago and people coming home, and you can see that they're coming away a lot skinnier, right? People coming in skinnier. New York, skinnier, much skinnier. To me, it should be the opposite because I'm like, hey, we have no 310 days out of the year. It's sunny. There's no reason you can't get outside and walk. But yet, when I look at the airports and stuff, people coming back, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of overweight people. And that's amazing. Whereas Chicago kind of makes sense because 5 months now, I grew up in Chicago, 5 months out of the year, it's freaking cold. You might not be able to get outside to move around. You might not have the wherewithal or the financial ability to go to a gym, you know? But yet when I was at home, much skinnier, much more fit. So it doesn't make sense to me. The next place that I started to really look at it, and this floored me. So I live in Tampa. I'm an annual Disney pass holder.
Okay.
And walking around Disney and seeing these kids. And when I went to Disney my first time in 1970, it was like, oh, let's go on this. Let's go on this. And you could see all the kids were like that. The kids were brats because they wanted to keep going. And it was the adults that were tired, like, hey, we're going to go see a show for a little bit just to sit down or watch, you go to the Hall of Presidents and it's a 20-minute friggin' presentation, right? And that's their chance to sit down. So they would go on all these rides, sit in the lines, blah, blah, blah. Then they'd find some place to either eat or watch a show. And that was the adults' time too. It's the other way around. I got these little kids that are 10 years old going, oh my God, can we please just sit down? Oh, I'm a daddy, mommy. I just want to sit down. Oh my God. And the adults are like, what is going on? And I'm looking around going, you're at the most magical, happiest place on earth. And these kids want to go sit down. They want to eat. They want to sit down. And when you look at the kids, you understand why. And it's just horrible.
Yeah. The number of overweight children, obese children is staggering. Not a good precursor for the life ahead.
Exactly. But I will say one thing about those kids. Strongest thumbs in the world. Strongest thumbs in the world. Yeah. So getting back to what we were talking about, so all those diets, was there one that you committed to that seemed to work better than others?
No, not at the time, because basically all diets have some element of calorie restriction.
Mm-hmm.
When I did lose my weight, I used the conventional wisdom of the time, but I've since changed what I do. But it worked for me. It did work. It left me tired, hungry, and cranky all the time.
Okay, so let's explain or define conventional wisdom.
Oh, the food pyramid, low fat, all of that. I'm 5'3". Okay. I'm a short little woman. Although my friend who's 4'11" says I'm tall, bless her. This little body doesn't get a whole lot of calories. Right. So in order to lose 1 pound a week, that meant every day religiously, I could only take in 1,200 calories. If I took in 1,400 calories, I would gain at least half a pound, if not a full pound.
Wow.
Right? But I was determined to lose my weight because I was about to turn 50. And as a woman, I was thinking, if I don't lose it now, it's way harder after 50 for a woman to lose weight. So I did the low fat thing. I stayed on track. I think in the end, at that time, I had been up 50, 60 pounds, but I think I had lost some, and I only had about 20, 25 to lose to reach my goal weight. But I did it.
But it was a
And
grind.
And to maintain, I was still struggling with what I considered kind of a small amount of food because I had so tanked my metabolism, right? All those years of dieting. I got a little more, but not a lot more. And about 2 years in, I thought, there's got to be something better than this. And I started doing some research because, Brad, when I realized that I was not doing well on my diet the first time, I thought, I got to do some research and find out what's going on. And I ran across this term that I was not aware of. But as soon as I heard it, I thought, oh, yeah, that's me. And that's the emotional eater. Right? So 2 years later, when I was trying to maintain, it wasn't emotional eating, it was hunger. It was actual hunger. So I did some more research and I ran across this methodology, just a series of questions. I answered all the questions, and the nutrition that it suggested for me, I thought, that's never gonna work. But I thought, okay, I am at my goal weight. Surely a week of trying this will not be a problem. I lost 2 pounds that week.
Wow.
And my husband said, okay, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing now, this is what we want to do, because I wasn't tired, I wasn't hungry, and I wasn't cranky.
And this was simply by asking yourself 3 questions.
No, a bunch of questions.
All
It
right,
took me an hour. I mean, it's a whole thing that I now do with my clients, right? I call it your unique nutrition blueprint. Because, we all have different thumbprints, right? Well, apparently your iris and the shape of your ear is also distinctive to the person. So if that's true, why wouldn't our bodily chemistry also be somewhat that way? Yeah.
Agreed.
So I just started following this, and it was basically fewer carbs, a little more fat. But it fit my body like a glove. And in fact, now 10 years later, I still eat that way because it keeps me balanced. I don't have emotional ups and downs. It just fits me. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm doing. So that worked for me enough that I could make it a lifestyle. And I think that's where we gain the weight back, is that we don't learn anything from the diet that works for us.
Right.
Which gets us back to the place where we were before, if we don't manage it well. Yeah. So if we learn something that, oh, this makes me satisfied for longer. I mean, a boiled egg versus Captain Crunch. I'd prefer the Captain Crunch, but I'll be hungry in 20 minutes if I have a boiled egg. If we learn that from what our experience, then we can find our way to maintenance, and then we can maintain. I've been the same weight since October the 8th, 2012.
That's amazing. And I think, there's definitely something to be learned from that. I see what you're saying. I've got about 15 people on my roster, and it's a unique thing because I've got people that are running anywhere from 30 to 70, 80 miles a week. And that's all fueled by carbohydrates. You can try the keto thing. You can try and move your body over to fueling by fat. But when it comes to speed and longevity, it just takes so much longer to burn to get the energy into the glycogen stores that I don't feel like it works for anybody. There are a few people that I've talked to that it does work. But what does work is to maintain, and this is where I separate it. You have nutrition, which is breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. Right. But then you've got fuel, pre, post, and during workout. Totally different. So I had one client who did exactly what you're saying. She reduced her number of carbohydrates for nutrition. But prior and during her workout, she would fuel with carbs and then go back to a lower carbohydrates. And when we did it that way, she did a 4-day race. on Thursday was a 5K, Saturday was a 10K, Sunday was a half marathon, and Saturday was a full. He PR'd, which is personal record, all 4 of them.
Wow.
Because, this is what I believe, is what you said. She found what worked for her as a lower carb rate. I personally, and I've gone through this myself, I'm more lower fat. I utilize carbs, but I'm constantly biking, swimming, running. If I'm not coaching, and some of my coaching is running with them. So it's dual workouts, the whole bit. I work better with low fat.
My cousin does too.
Yeah.
Finding what actually works for you is the key. No matter what the rest of the world is doing.
And you could find that unique nutrition blueprint by answering those questions that you talked about, not just trial and error.
You can find it by trial and error. If you keep good logs and you say, okay, when I eat this, I feel this way. When I eat that, this is what I feel. Or, that's basically what the questions are, is how do you feel on this or that or whatever? And it has a few very strange questions like the white, how white is the white of your eye, which I find that one really strange. But you know what? I don't know the science. I just know how to enter the information. And that's all I have to do. My skills are elsewhere. If you, like when I was in elementary school, junior high, high school, if I had thought, gee, I'm always hungry after Captain Crunch, I wonder why. Then I might have realized, oh, that's not the best breakfast for me, and done something different. We carry all this information within us. We just need sometimes a little help in pulling it out. Or, they've heard you have to do this or you can't do that. I saw an article last week about how magnificent eggs are for the body. And I remember the Time magazine cover in the early 80s of the frowny face with the eggs for the eyes. And I was thinking, we've come a long way.
I believe that eggs are pretty much the perfect food.
I love them. I buy them by the dozens.
Yeah. So you've got the egg white, which has got a significant amount of protein. You've got the egg yolk, which has got all the nutrition, beta carotene, choline, and they talk about it being cholesterol, but there is no study that actually proves that there's an overabundance of cholesterol for eating eggs. Everybody complains about it, but there's actually no way that I found that states that eating eggs every single day causes high cholesterol.
No.
And there's really no study linking high cholesterol to congenital disease.
Actually, they say the cholesterol we consume as food doesn't affect our blood level, blood cholesterol level.
Interesting.
Fascinating. But you want a dirty little secret I learned a few years ago?
Yes.
So in the late 60s, they were trying to figure out what made people gain weight. There was this little guy in the UK who kept saying, it's sugar, it's sugar, it's sugar. And people laughed at him, and Ansel Keys just browbeat him down. And the Sugar Research Foundation paid 2 Harvard scientists $50,000 each in 1968. Think about that in terms now.
That's $1 billion now.
To point the finger of blame away from sugar to fat. And that's how this that and Ansel Keys is how this whole thing about excess carbohydrates got started for everyone. Granted, there are people who need them.
Right.
It just doesn't work for everybody. And it made me tired, hungry, and cranky all the time.
Exactly. Yes. Atkins was the big one, right? He was the one that really kind of make everything blew up, right? And it wasn't until they, he died from a massive coronary that people started to go, whoa, hang on a second here. Maybe we got to look at this. I had tried Atkins, and yes, it worked. But if you're going to give me 20 grams of carbohydrates every day, and that's all I get, yeah. But yeah, again, I was like you, tired, hungry, cranky, irritable, didn't sleep well.
Doesn't work for you.
So it did not work for me.
Of course, Atkins only has that for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. And
that's the difference. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they've learned a lot about this whole thing, because there was that whole explosion of keto stuff around 2014, 16, something like that. It all went out the window during the pandemic, when everyone was home and in need of comfort.
Yes.
Yeah. That Atkins does that for 2 weeks. They call that the induction period. And then you slowly add back carbohydrates until you find the level that allows you to maintain your weight.
Yes. Yeah. And I agree with that. But for me, it
didn't work
because I was still running. And I mean, they tell you not to work out the first 2 weeks, but I was like, if you're in the middle of a race or something, that's not going to happen. And I thought, oh, well, no, I'm fit enough that I can handle it. And it just didn't work. But that's neither here nor there. And that's where that's one of the things, as I looked back, that I realized that, hey, I need to separate fuel from nutrition. And so let's talk more about the emotional eating. I want to get into that. Is how people can recognize that and redirect themselves. So let's start with you. So how did you end up realizing about your emotional eating?
Well, I saw the term and I thought, oh, that's me. That's why when I'm mad, sad, frustrated, angry, upset in any way, happy, ready to celebrate, that's why I always reach for food. Now, the best example I had of that was probably when my mother passed away, because I all but crawled into my peanut butter jar. Now, peanut butter is a perfectly lovely food, except in the quantities I was taking in. Mm-hmm. And then a few years later, my grandmother passed away. And I thought, I can't do that again. What am I going to do? When I find myself circling the refrigerator, going back for another spoonful of peanut butter, I know I have to stop myself and go, okay, what's going on? Because you're just reaching for comfort. Let's get that some other way. Emotional eating is as natural as it can be. And we learn it at birth. Because when a baby cries, what do?
Yeah, the first years, right.
You put a pacifier or a bottle or the breast, you just put something in their mouths, because oral soothing is a thing. It's real. We do it. That's why children suck their thumbs or bite their nails. They're soothing themselves with whatever they have. And unfortunately, they go from, the pacifier or thumb to donuts, pizza. I mean, every boardroom in the country has a candy bowl in the middle of it. The receptionist desk has a candy bowl on top. They go to the doctor. They give them some candy, usually, even the dentist. It's just how we do. And that's how our celebrations are. That's why they are feast days. The joy of life, of whatever we're celebrating, and we eat. And that's what happened at the ranch, too. We were all together, so we ate all of our favorite things. So when I was losing my weight, you see this pacifier, right? And you see it has this blue tape on the back of it. That's because I taped it to my refrigerator at about my height to remind me what I was looking for when I went to the refrigerator.
That's
Mr. Jones came down and said, I said, left, don't worry about it. He said, sure, whatever works for you, babe.
What do you think about it being habit? Not necessarily comfort, but habit.
We have a habit of wanting soothing.
Oh, okay. I never thought about that.
And you sit down in front of the TV, what are you going to do?
That's exactly where I was going.
And what I often say is, okay, if you're that bored watching television, maybe you need to do something else. If you have to have something to do with your hand to mouth, I know it's that whole movie thing and the smell of buttered popcorn. I mean, who can say no, right?
Right. Hey, you don't even go by me. I was looking into a business venture when I lived in Arizona, and somebody had invented a popcorn vending machine that would pop the popcorn. It wasn't separate bags. You would choose the size, put it in, and it would pop it
Immediately. Wow.
on the top. So as it came down and the butter came down, it would blow the scent around the room. So as soon as one person got a bag, all of a sudden it was like, all right, oh my God, we have to go. Right. But so when you and I were growing up, it was an event to go to the movies. Right. And you'd spend 2 hours in the movie and you'd have popcorn and candy and pop, but it would end there. Right. Maybe this 2 hour span and you're munging at some popcorn and maybe a couple pieces of candy and blah, blah, blah. Fine. But now Netflix and chill, where you could be there 6-7 hours with friends or not, and you just kind of get pulled into things, binge watching that 2 hour period, which could be just an event, just a nice time out with family, girlfriend, parents, whatever. Mm-hmm. Great. No problem. But when you start getting into Netflix and chill,
it could go on.
It can go on and on and on. And that's exactly where I was getting at, was 40% of smoking. 40% of addiction to smoking is this habit.
And when they kick smoking, they usually gain weight because they like that habit.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's the same with everybody else. Yeah. So if you associate watching television with this, then you're going to gain weight, because every time you go to sit down and watch a movie or bet Netflix and chill or whatever, you're going to gain weight because this is what you're doing. Now, of course, it depends on what you're eating. And it depends on what you've eaten before and after and blah, blah, blah. It, like, you go, hey, you know what? I'm going to watch a couple movies a day. That's where I'm going to get my calories from, is because I know that when I sit down, I like to eat. So no breakfast, lunch, dinner. I'm going to take those. And because I know I'm going to be snacking. Great. Good habit, right? Because you know yourself well enough that that's what's going to happen, I believe. Especially if you're using carrots, celery, veggies, fruit, great. But you still know that, all right, I know I'm going to be, Netflix and chilling today. I'm not ordering pizza. I'm not doing any of this thing because I know I'm going to be snacking all the time. Great. But most people don't do that. It's breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus Netflix and chill.
Snacks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I know
it happens a lot.
I'm guilty of it. I'm 100% guilty of it. If I get caught into something, I'm reaching for something.
And sometimes you have to look at what the food is and why it's so important to you.
Now, that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, because we have memory, right? I often ask people, in fact, I think I did this example in my TEDx talk, and it was, what is it about that food that draws you? And if we can find what's driving the bus, we can take away its keys.
Nice.
Yeah, because whatever that is what's driving the behavior. So I realized that it was peanut butter because my grandmother and I were so tight. And we both like peanut butter. We both like chocolate. If you had them together, even better. But, peanut butter will do. Right? And what I finally realized, I was thinking, what I have them do is think about the first time they remember having something. Do you want to do this, Brad?
Yeah.
Is there a particular food you always reach for?
Oh, man. For me, it's a mixture. It's usually chips.
Okay, chips.
Something crunchy and salty.
Okay, so that's part of the bliss point. So that may be it. But think about the first time you remember having chips. Anything in particular come up?
Dad, we would sit down and watch TV, watch a sporting event, watch the $6 Million Man together. And he would have, Mom would buy this box of chips, and it was Yo-Yos in Chicago. And it would be a big box and would come with 3 bags, and she'd buy it in bulk like that. And Dad would constantly be like, all right, he'd go pour it into a bowl and then we'd pass it around. And that's
so time with your dad.
Yeah.
Those chips are your connection to your dad, like the peanut butter was my connection to my nan. And what we have to do is tease that apart a little bit and figure out, what are we looking for? What did that experience or that person do for you? that was meaningful enough that it would make you hold on to the chips?
There's two things that I hold on to that I continue to go for. One is the chips.
Yeah.
And I still enjoy watching television with my dad. And I go to my dad's house and now we play games and cards and stuff as we become more active. But I still always ask him like, hey, there's this movie I want you to see. Let's sit down and watch it. Or we always have the game on or something, even while we were playing games. But it still, to me, is still so soothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it takes you back to that childhood of time with dad.
Right.
Just like peanut butter took me back to my nan, who was the most loving and encouraging person I ever had in my life.
So what would be your advice for people to start to understand why people are reaching for certain foods?
Go through that exercise. What was it? What was going on? Who gave it to you? And then remember. And, I've had people post on YouTube say, oh, that was when my parents took me wherever. Or for a lot of men, they like ice cream late at night. And sometimes it's because they've been a very good boy all day. They need an affirmation. Yes. Need a little reward. And the other thing is, at least in Texas, for Little League games, if you won, you got pizza.
Right.
And if you lost, you got ice cream. Or when mom and dad took them out to tell them they were getting a divorce, they took them for ice cream. So it becomes a soothing food.
My grandfather, who was pretty fit, not overweight, just normal, he didn't really work out except that he walked 3 times a day. But it always was right after dinner. And even when we went out or he stayed home, it was, can I have a scoop of ice cream? 1 scoop in a bowl. And that was it. That's all he needed. That was it. And that was for as long as I can remember, whenever grandma and grandpa were around. He was like, my mom would always say at the end, does anybody want anything else? And my grandfather would always say, can I have a scoop of ice cream? Or we'd be at their house and he'd say, who wants ice cream?
Yeah.
But it would be in this little container and 1 scoop. That's it. But breakfast, lunch, and dinner, after breakfast, go walk a mile. After lunch, go walk a mile. After dinner, go walk a mile. So so it was there, but that was a soothing thing for me. So yeah, I carried that in later. Now I just don't bring coffee. I just don't bring ice cream in the house either very much. So I just don't do it. So would you say that if the next time, if you find that you're getting a soothing response from different food, if you're sitting watching television and you go to reach for something, see if you can stop yourself and go, why am I reaching for that particular food, and see if they can find the connection?
Yes. Or I also have an acronym that I use with people.
Nice.
I say it's not hard to overcome emotional eating, but you do have to get the hang of it. And hang is the acronym. The H, am I hungry? If you are, you may need something to eat. If you're not, then go to the A. What is the attraction to that food in that moment? What are you looking for? The N is, what do you actually need? For example, I needed love and encouragement in that moment. That's why I was going for the peanut butter. Others just need maybe a walk around the block. They need to blow off some energy. They may need to talk to someone. They need to pet the dog, right? They just need something different, change the environment just a little. And the G is go. Go get that, because whatever that is will soothe you more than the food ever possibly could.
Find yourself reaching for something. Are you hungry?
Yeah.
If you're absolutely hungry, eat. It's fine. If you're not, what's the attraction to that? And that's where we find our connection. Peanut butter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chips.
Yeah.
So what's the need?
What do you need?
Soothing or a sense of calm, which would be me. And then find where I can get that sense of calm. Maybe instead of reaching for the chips, I go pet the cats or go pick one up. Yeah.
I agree.
So, yeah, I don't have an addiction to cats. I have an addiction to adopting cats.
Care for small things.
It's a problem. It's a problem because it's like, Renee, I have to call the pet store before I go to buy food and say, are there adopted cats in there today? Is the adoption people there right now? Yes, they are. Okay. When are they leaving? Okay.
I understand.
Oh, okay. So there you go. I guess I'm ordering from Amazon this time because I'm not going. Otherwise, I'm going to end up with 2 more cats. But yeah. So, and I love dogs too. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not home enough. I don't think cats take care of themselves. They've got, anyway, that's a whole different story.
I have 2 of each.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. So hang, I think that is probably, as far as what you were talking about is one, finding that nutritional blueprint. What works for you? Is it lower carb? Is it lower fat? Is sugar your issue? Or maybe it's starches that are your issue. Is it maybe pasta causes you to blow up? I mean, I found people that, even though bananas and grapes and pineapple and stuff are good for you, the amount of sugar in them will blow them up.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
Oh, my dad blew up on oranges. Loves oranges. Loves them.
Ah.
And he blew up on oranges. And my mom kept saying, you understand how much sugar is inside of an orange. It's not the fact that you can't have an orange. It's not the abundance of which you're eating them.
Yeah. But I mean, that's true of a lot of things.
Oh, overabundance of anything is going to cause issues. But finding a nutritional blueprint, and then when you are reaching for something that's not in your breakfast, lunch, dinner planned snacks, is hang, And tell me about that anecdote one more time. What you talk about as far as the emotional eating and that leads into the hang. Say that again.
What did I say?
Emotional eating.
It's not hard to overcome emotional eating. You just need to get the hang of it.
There you go.
Get the hang of it.
Right. It's not hard to overcome emotional eating. You just need to get the hang of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Hunger, attractiveness, need, and go.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, we eat for emotional reasons. This is going to sound silly, but for a reason. There's something we're looking for. And sometimes it's just past that drives us. Right? So one of the things that I often say is, face your stuff. Don't stuff your face.
Love that.
It was my mantra when I was losing my weight.
Oh, I love that.
Because something's driving the bus. Something's driving that behavior bus. Let's find that, deal with it so it doesn't bother you. It doesn't get any worse.
And for me, I would go one step forward is to find an activity, a physical activity that can give you that need. You blew off some energy, go take a walk, take a run, get on your skateboard, go for a bike ride, do that instead of eating. Especially if you are learning to control your eating and you have a goal weight, or you have a physical goal that you want to go after. But anyway, Renee, this has been absolutely amazing. So I want a couple things so Renee has a book out. It's called What's Really Eating You? Overcome the Triggers of Comfort Eating. And it is on Amazon, and I'm going to have a link to that in the show notes. That's now in Spanish.
And audio.
Which is great. I always talk about people using audio. You feel like you can't sit down to read a book, or if it takes a while, use audio. Because not only is audio great because you can have your earphones in whenever you want, but you can also speed it up.
Yep.
So you can get to it twice as fast, 1.5 times as fast, or slow it down if the author tends to speak a little bit faster. And Audible will keep the tone of the author. So, the author doesn't sound like a chipmunk if you speed it up to 2 versus which is great. So no Alvin and the Chipmunks while you're listening to What's Really Eating You? Overcome the Triggers of Comfort Eating by Renee Jones. So this has been amazing. Also, packyourownbag.com is Renee's site with her blog, her coaching, that you can find the book on there as well. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
YouTube or Facebook.
So we're going to have those on. We're going to have all of her social media, on the site, on the show notes, but those two will be the top. So Facebook and YouTube. So anyway, but Renee, this has been absolutely amazing. You've given so many great tools, resources, things to think about that really are needed in this time and age where we're 40% obese, 70% are overweight, and people have fighting this yo-yo dieting. And these are the tools that we need right now. And they are simple, not easy, is how I would say it. It's very simple for me to ask those questions, not easy for me to answer those questions. But once we do, we can find out why we're being stuck in the pattern that we are.
And even more, I think it becomes a part of who you are to pay attention. And I think once we get this in our bones, it is who we are, then it's much easier to make good choices consistently.
Excellent. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Check out all of those links in the show notes. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, please go ahead and give us a review. I don't care if it's good or bad, because I'll get feedback from either one of them. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and like, share, subscribe, hit the bell so you get the next alert when there's a new episode dropping. And as for Renee and myself, we'll see you in the next one. Well, that wraps up another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Minus, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.